السلام عليكم، ازيكم؟ هم يا رب تكونوا بخير. دلوقتي هنعمل الحلقة الثانية للرياكشن على مقابلة باسم يوسف مع الإعلامي البريطاني بيرس مورجان عن قضية الحرب على غزة أو إسرائيل وفلسطين. وهنشوف طبعا باسم هيقول ايه، وهل هيفضل بيرس مورجان بياخد الكلام بتاعه لناحية حماس وهل تدين حماس، ولا هيعمل مقابلة عدلة تليق يعني بالمكانة بتاعته. دينا هنشوف.
The genuine will on both sides for peace has not existed.
No.
I think it's been a deceit to the world.
No, I'm sorry.
And to the relative groups of people on both sides.
The official...
And actually a betrayal of them.
The official stand of the Palestinian Authority, and again, I cannot speak, it is very difficult to do this. The official stand of the Palestinian Authority is that we are just happy with 22% of the land. Just give us like that. Yes, there are people that dissent, but the thing is, you cannot just say, okay, let's talk about peace. And then you take away my land. Let's talk about peace. And there's a kind of like passive aggressiveness happening. Oh, let's talk about it, but I'm going to build settlements. I'm going to suffocate your cities and your villages.
You see, I think that has been incredibly inflammatory.
Yes.
Worsening the situation. I think putting back the chance of peace. I mean, Netanyahu, I interviewed Netanyahu earlier this year in the middle of the big social protests.
بس ده فعلا، ما هو الفلسطيني يقول لك 22% من الارض احسن من ما فيش، هعمل ايه؟ بس طبعا لولا ابطال المقاومه كان زمانهم قبلوا بحاجه زي كده.
In his own country, and I couldn't understand what he thought he was doing, except that it seemed to me political expediency that he had to get power. You know, again, he had put a bunch of right-wing headbangers into his cabinet who have incredibly bad records, speak in an incredibly incendiary way about Palestinians, for example, and that he did this for power, and then he launched because they were pushing him to do it, a ridiculous assault on the integrity of the Supreme Court, the independence of the Supreme Court, and many Israelis rose up. So. The Supreme Court, the independence of the Supreme Court, and many Israelis rose up. So Netanyahu has become to me a big problem, right? And the people, all the polling shows that Israeli people are very unhappy with Netanyahu. I don't think he's ever going to actually want to forge peace, and in fact, I think he was instrumental with Hamas in wanting to keep them in power, because he felt that that would create the split with the Palestinians, with two political groups, and that would be good for Israel.
ملهاش علاقة على فكرة برضه، يعني ده كتوضيح كمان، ده ما يثبتش ان عشان هم بيقعدوا يقولوا كده حماس اللي عاملها الامريكان وعاملاها ايران وعاملاها مش عارف. حماس يا جدعان دي ما هو عناصرها من الفلسطينيين اللي متاخد حقهم ومتاخد ارضهم، فطبيعي دي مقاومة مش جهاد بقى وجهاد. طبعا ده اللي هم بيعملوه ده جهاد اسلامي، ودي احلى حاجه طبعا في الدنيا بالنسبه لهم وبالنسبه لنا احنا كمان، بس عشان ما حدش يقول لك ارهابيين والمصطلح التعبان اللي هم عارفيننا بيه دوت، لا دي مقاومه بيحاولوا يستردوا ارضهم.
And it was leaked in a Likud conference in 2019 that he was bragging about giving Hamas money because this is a way that
عادي، ما ياخدوا الفلوس، ايه المشكله؟ كلبي ينبح لي ولا كلبي ينبح عليا.
we can keep Palestinian divided. And yet, so we will never have one. So this is a guy who was.
But look, we can agree about Netanyahu, I think.
No,
right?
but not just Netanyahu. There's a book.
And I would say most of his cabinet.
There's a book called The Fear of Peace. It's by Moshe Zimmerman, and he's an Israeli historian. And he said, like, the average Israeli citizen does not have a vision of peace, because for 70 years, this is a country that has been. The military, the war has been going on for, they have been expanding because of war, the military is taking over, so the whole idea of peace is not even there. It's not just Netanyahu, like you have, I remember you have interviewed Naftali Bennett.
Yes.
And I think you tweeted that like that was like a very kind of reasonable take.
Yeah? I don't think I said reasonable. No.
Yeah, but like this Naftali, he went after Queen Rania. And he called up shame on Queen Rania.
No, I didn't say reasonable. I just said this. I did a fire emoji.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just said what he was saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to ask you about Queen Rania, and let's ask about, since you've raised it.
Yeah.
Because Queen Rania accused the West of a glaring double standard. She said, this is the first time in modern history there's such human suffering, and the world is not even calling for a ceasefire. So the silence is deafening, and to many in our region, it makes the Western world complicit. Now, other people said, well, okay, if you feel that strongly, why aren't you taking in any Palestinians? Why is Egypt not taking Palestinians? Why does the Arab world want to constantly attack Israel without actually offering any place to go for the Palestinians? And what do you say to that?
That is exactly what Israel wants. And that is exactly what actually starts Third War III. This is the war solution. These are their lands. And then suddenly take them. Why? So they've been basically kicked around from their homes. And now another country should take them? You see what will happen? Imagine this. Now. And because Israeli official has been talking openly about this. It's like, why don't they just go in Sinai? Why they go? You know what would happen? Those people are going to be pushed in Sinai. And with any population, 2 million people, they are living in refugee camp. What do you think will happen? Unrest, chaos. And then after a few years, the Western media will come with their cameras like, oh, look at those Arabs. Oh, they're killing each other. Oh, Israel is good that they got rid of them. And then they will go to the West Bank. And suddenly those 3.5 million people push into Jordan. The whole idea, why does Jordan take them? Why does Egypt take them? The same question. Europe has 44 countries. Why don't they take Israel? America has 50 states. Why don't they give them Florida? I mean, we seem to complain about Florida the whole time. Why don't they just like give Israel? The whole
حلو طبعا اللي هو قاله منطقية. طب ما هي بنفس المنطق ما تاخدوا انتوا الإسرائيليين عندكم. بس كالعادة هو عشان شايفك أقل منه هو اللي يديك الأوامر وهو اللي يقعد يقول لك اعمل كذا وما تعملش كذا. وطبعا هم مش هيسكتوا. ما هو انت ما تنساش الدولة بتاعتهم من النيل للفرات. فانت هو هيبعتهم سينا بس مش هيسكت على كده. هيجي بعدها بفترة يقول لك بص رموا عليا طوبة من سينا. رموا عليا طوبة وصلت لي بصراحة في القدس فمضايقاني. انا داخل على سينا. خشوا كده بقى روحوا الشرقية روحوا المنوفية مش بتاعتي. تاخروا وياخد سينا كمان. ويروح داخل على الأردن لا 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 انا مش عاجبني الناس دي خد دخلهم جوه عندك. ويفضل وهكذا وهكذا وعمال يتوسع لحد ما ياخد الدولة الموعودة بتاعته. وطبعا كله ساكت.
whole idea was like, oh, you're Arabs, you're all the same. No, no, no. Because what will happen then? So Israel will move into Jordan? It's like, oh, Saudi, why don't you take the Jordanian?
So
this is not a solution. This is not a solution.
Basim, I hear you. I'm not taking a position either way. Let me ask you directly.
But I want to say something about what Queen Radia said.
Okay.
The whole idea about like the West.
Yeah.
I think that in 3 weeks, Israel morally corrupted the West like no other. I think the West will have a lot of time to recover because for years, the West has been telling us, oh, look, we're liberal.
الحريات حقوق الانسان والناس دول يا لهوي اتدمروا بسبب اللي اسرائيل عملته. كلهم الاقنعه بتاعتهم واحد. بس الواحد كان عارف كده من زمان. بس بقى الليبراليين العرب والمتحررين العرب والمتنورين العرب والشغل الكحيان دول كانوا لسه بيلحسوا جزمه السيد الغربي. فكويس يعني ان هم اتكشفوا قدامهم. وطبعا هيفضلوا ينكروا.
We're all about human rights. All are equal. Adopt our values. And then suddenly, but you don't want to even to cease. We don't want to even tell Israel to stop. And suddenly we wake up and we found McDonald's are giving free meals to the Israeli because like nothing will make you feel better after killing a bunch of Palestinian kids than a happy meal.
So let me ask you this.
They have a toy.
So this brings me to Hamas, okay? So what Israel will say, because they say it to me every time they come on the program, whoever from Ehud Barak to Natalie Bennett, whoever it may be. They say, look, we suffered such a catastrophic terror attack on October the 7th that we have decided we are going to get rid of Hamas. There are 40,000 or so Hamas terrorists in their eyes who need to be got rid of. And I do believe they're terrorists. Only terrorists can commit the kind of act of terrorism we saw. So can we, on that point, can we agree on that? Do you believe Hamas is a terror group?
It is classified by America as I'm not a big fan of Hamas, and they are a militant group. Does like stuff like.
Are they terrorists? Do you think?
Yeah.
عايز يجرجروا الموضوع. حرقهم اللي عملته حماس 7 اكتوبر حارق بشكل مش طبيعي. لانهم طول عمرهم كانوا عمالين يدبوا ويعملوا اللي هم عايزين يعملوا ما بدلهم في الشعب الفلسطيني وفي غزه وفي الناحيه الثانيه برضه في الضفه الغربيه ما فيهاش حماس. محدش كان بيقول لهم تلت التلاته كام ولا حد كان بيقول لهم بهم حتى. بس اللي حماس عملته مش قليل. هي وجعت جامد. فعاش والله عاش ان هي حرقه حتى البريطانيين الاوروبيين اللي هم الصهاينه المتخفيين. بس حرقهم هم كمان.
Okay, so we agree on this. So you have 40,000 of them living in Gaza amongst the civilian population. If Israel has decided to eliminate a terror group, Hamas, as the world did with ISIS, for example, and I think there are a lot of parallels given the way they behaved on October the 7th to ISIS, how do you do it? How do you do it if you don't do it the way Israel is currently trying to do it?
Exactly not the way that Israel does it, because if you have one of the most advanced military powers in the world, and it takes
انت اللي
you
فاردها وعامل
3
جامد.
weeks, 9,000
عملت ايه
Palestinian
المدنيين؟
civilian
ده اللي انت
deaths,
قادر عليه.
21,000
ده اللي هو قادر
injured.
عليه ولا
As we are
أكتر ولا
talking
حاجة.
right now,
جيش تعبان.
Israel just bombed Jabalia, which is a known refugee camp. It is a very, this is not self-defense. You know, like one of the most questions, like, does Israel...
مش سيلف ديفنس ولا حاجه، هو اباده جماعيه. هو عايز يبيد الشعب الفلسطيني، عايز يفضل يضرب كده من اول الشمال، يفضل ينزلهم ناحيه الجنوب، لان الخطه ان هم يمشوا على سيناء، فيفضل ينزلهم ناحيه الجنوب، وبعد كده يا مصر انت ما بتفتحيش ليه المعبر تعدي الفلسطينيين الغلابه اللي عمالين يتضربوا دول، ودي ما عندك سيناء. ده المطلوب، وللاسف ما حدش بيتصرف لحد ما نوصل للنقطه دي، واللي هتبقى نقطه مصيبه ومشكله كبيره جدا.
Israel have the right to defend itself. This is a no-value question. This is a no-value question.
Well, I would ask a different point. I would say not only do they have a right to defend themselves, which every country would after a terror attack, right? But they actually have a duty and responsibility to their population to try and stop that happening again to them.
They've been doing...
And I do understand, and I agree with that.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If it takes you all of that time, all of these civilians, to take out a few hundred guerrilla fighters...
We don't know how many of the people
who died. We
don't know.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but Bاسم, you don't know and I don't know.
We don't know, but
right?
like...
We don't even know if the casualty numbers are correct because they're all coming from Hamas.
And we should,
the health authority...
and we should believe Israel?
No, not necessarily, no. No, I don't believe either side.
But here's my problem with Israel.
But here's my point. I don't think we should assume that we know these statistics are correct. I don't think we should assume we know exactly how many children are being killed. We do know a lot have been killed, so the moral argument remains the same. But we don't know how many Hamas terrorists have been killed in the last 3 weeks. We just don't know, do we?
So basically we're dealing with a very incompetent military force that has been sucking America dry for years, and then they cannot do the job.
المفروض عندك القدرة انك تقول مين اللي مات من عناصر حماس ومين ما ماتش من عناصر حماس، لان دي كارثة اصلا، ان انت بتضرب من غير ما تكون عندك كده، ما عندكش بقى هدف معين، مفيش، انت مش بتضرب على هدف معين، اللي هو لا انا عارف ان المكان ده فيه مثلا 20 واحد من حماس فبضربه، هيموت مثلا، ممكن هيموت كله، اللي هيموت 40 بس في 20 من حماس ماتوا. لا انت ما بتقدرش حتى تعمل كده. ليه؟ زي ما المتخلف ده مقتنع، يعني دماغه تعبانه طبعا. هو صهيوني، هو اللي مشغلينه صهاينه، هو بيبقى صهيوني. ده اعلامي بق ليهم وخلاص. المهم ان هو اصلا ما يعرفش جيش كحيان، مش قادر يعمل حاجه. بس الهدف الحقيقي واللي مش معلن هو الاباده الجماعيه عشان ياخد المكان ده كله.
But how else do they get rid of Hamas?
Not like that.
How do they do it?
I don't know, but not like that, because they've been trying
the same.
You've got
to have another...
They have, first of all, I'm not a military expert. Second of all, they've been trying the same thing for years. They go in, this is not an eye for an eye anymore. This is an eye, a limb, a life, a house, a neighborhood, a whole population for an eye.
They don't sit. I mean, your friend Ben Shapiro that you particularly despise.
Oh, I love Ben Shapiro. He's very smart.
Oh, yeah, but you've been very critical. I mean, that's fair enough. I'm sure he would be of you. But when I asked him about proportion, he said I don't care about a proportionate response.
So let's kill civilians as
Hamas did this, so we are going to get rid of Hamas.
But
it's not in his eyes. It wasn't eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. It was this group of terrorists did this, and we are now going to rid the world of these terrorists.
And this
ايوه، وفي الطريق هتعمل ايه؟ انت فاشل ومش ما تعملش هدف انت مش هتعرف تعمله اصلا. انت فاشل ومش هتقدر تقضي عليهم خالص. لان حماس مش جماعه ارهابيه، ده مقاومه. يعني انت قضيت على القاده بتوع حماس وشويه معظم العناصر كمان قضيت عليها. من بكره الصبح تاني يوم هتلاقي عناصر جديده وقاده جداد، لان دي مقاومه. طول ما الشعب الفلسطيني موجود، طول ما هيفضل موجود حاجه اسمها حماس.
This is very important to look at things in context. When you see how Israelis talk inside their community, there was a very famous post by Yeriot. He is the speechwriter of Netanyahu, he said, what is so horrific about understanding that the whole Palestinian people are our enemies? All of them are enemy combatants. We should kill them, kill their mother, destroy their homes, the homes that they raised those snakes, so no snakes will be raised in this house anymore. And this was reposted by Ali Chaket, which is the minister of, wait for it, justice. It's not about Hamas anymore. It is not about Hamas. They can tell you it's about Hamas, but it's not about Hamas. It is basically, they have said it many times, Piers. This is a way to kind of push them into Sinai. This is not about eradicating Hamas. This ship has sailed. I am sorry, but like, anybody who still believes that this is about Hamas is stupid, because they.
See, I don't agree with that.
Really?
No, because I think.
But why there?
I'll tell you why I don't agree.
There are like 100 people
I think
killed
any
in Gaza
country,
and the
any
West Bank.
country that suffered the kind of terror attack that Israel suffered, with the kind of death toll that occurred that day, 1,500 plus people, grandmothers, kids, young women being raped, kidnapped, beheaded, it's been reported, and so on. Well, you can raise an eyebrow. I mean, they found a young woman's skull, right?
But what about
the
babies that were beheaded?
Well, there was a report, and you and I had this discussion on air. You falsely quoted me, and I wanted to clarify that with you in person. You thought I'd said that 40 babies had been beheaded.
So what did you say?
I never said that.
What did you say?
I said it's been reported that 40 babies were killed, some of whom had been beheaded. That's what I said.
Yeah. Totally different.
انت بتنقل الخبر غير مؤكد، والمفروض اما الخبر ده يتكذب تطلع تكذبه، بس هو لحد اللحظه دي هو مش عايز يكذب الخبر، مش عايز يكذب حاجه زي كده مع انه اتكذب. البيت الابيض ذات نفسه اعتذر عن الرئيس بتاعه قاله. انت مش عايز تعتذر وتقول ان انت كنت غلط؟
It's a very different. Well, it is different.
Yes.
You accept it?
English is a second language, so
but they're different things.
Of course, yes.
Between
sure.
saying 40 babies have been beheaded and 40 babies have been reported to have been killed, including
some
where are those
beheaded
who were beheaded.
Babies?
Well, apparently journalists are being shown utterly horrific footage.
This comes to a very important question about credibility. Again, I'm not condoning what happened in October, but I'm not a journalist. But as a journalist, wouldn't you take anything that an authority would say with a grain of thought?
Yes.
Especially if this authority have a long history of lying. And I'm just going to give a few examples. 1996, they bombed Kana. It's a refugee camp. They killed 106 people. And despite that they knew it's a refugee camp. They said, oh, maybe it's a one-time off. 2006, they bombed Kana again. 2014, they killed 2 teenagers at a checkpoint. They denied, as usual, but CNN was there. So they said, we have to say it. 2018, they killed a medic, a Palestinian medic, and they fabricated a video showing that it's someone else, that he was a human shield. And then
can
I just like finish
that?
but
I do want to respond.
And then 2010, they killed Ahmed Oraikat, denied it, then said, it's okay, it's us. 2021, they bombed the media office in Hamas. It's not us, but no, I'm sorry. And then, 11th May 2022, Shireen Abu Akleh, a reporter, your colleague, she's Palestinian, American citizen, she was shot in the head. And they provided forensic evidence and even a doctor's video that it was not them, it was Islamic Jihad. How can I expect to believe this regime, especially if the president of Israel comes down with this ridiculous thing? Have you seen that? No. He said, okay. This was reported by Sky News, and it was the funniest thing I've seen so much. This was a Colin Powell moment, but like the cheap edition. Mr. Herzog said, like Isaac Herzog, it's like, we have found evidence on one of the terrorists, a manual to create chemical bombs. And then he showed this, and he showed, and this is, so I just want to say, why would a foot soldier go into enemy with like a manual to chemical bombing? It's like, is that BYOB, bring your own beer, bomb? It's crazy. And what he like have like local ingredients to make, and then this is like, this is a manual of Al-Qaeda, of course, convenient state in Qaeda. And let me read it to you in Arabic because this is funny. Which basically say, this is basically like a catalog for self-improvement for mujahideen. I didn't know that they have life coaches. So this, and you know what Sky News said? It's like, we cannot confirm or any of this, but we will show it anyway.
So let me respond.
So this is like,
let me respond.
This is a lying government.
So let me respond. I do think the Israeli government has lied.
All the time.
Right? I do think they've lied. I'm not going to dispute that. I do think they've been caught lying. I do think they've said things that turned out not to be true. I also think that 2 weeks ago, a hospital was bombed.
Yes.
And it was
Who do you think
immediately...
did it?
Well, I'm going to tell you what I think. Hamas immediately tell the world it was an Israeli airstrike and that 500 people were killed and that the hospital had been destroyed. And then as the next couple of days go by, the hospital is relatively undamaged. The car park was obliterated. Many fewer people than 500 were killed.
How many people died?
Well, we don't know, because actually we're reliant on the Palestinian Health Authority, which is Hamas in Gaza, for the figures. So
المشكلة أصلا ما هو أنت حتى لو ضربت يا عم ضربت الجراج، هو مش ده اللي حصل أصلا والمستشفى اتدمرت وكنا بنشوف فيديوهات للجثث مترمية والموضوع كان فظيع يعني. بس هنقول كده، أولا ليه بتضرب جراج أصلا؟ ليه؟ إيه اللي هيكون مستخبي من عناصر حماس في جراج؟ ثانيا أنت واخد بالك إن قبلها كانت مش عارف عشان برضو ما بقاش قلت البي بي سي مش فاكر بصراحة، بس وكالة إعلامية تقريبا البي بي سي كانت منزلة تقرير بتقول إن هل جنود حماس أو المجاهدين بيستخبوا في الأنفاق اللي موجودة تحت المستشفيات وبنين أنفاق تحت المستشفيات قبل القصف بفترة مش بعيدة يعني ساعات، وبعدها على طول يحصل القصف على المستشفى. تالت حاجة، حماس شريرة ووحشة جدا يا عم. هي ليها تضرب اصلا المستشفى؟ هي من الفوائد ليها او من مميزات ليها ان الناس دي تفضل عايشه، لان طول ما الناس دي عايشه هتفضل اسرائيل بالحجه بقى، هتفضل اسرائيل بتضرب وحماس بتضرب، اسرائيل بتضرب وحماس بتضرب، هتفضل حماس موجوده. انما لو الناس دي اختفت والناس دي اتبخرت والاباده الجماعيه حصلت فعلا، فحماس هتختفي هي رخر.
So we don't know
ما بيشغلوش دماغهم بجنيه، هم شايفين حاجه صحيح.
the number, but a lot fewer people died, it would appear, than the
Like
500. We don't know.
50?
Either way, it's appalling, but it may not have been anywhere near as appalling as was first said by Hamas. But here's the point. Most independent studies of what happened have concluded that it was almost certainly a militant stroke terror group inside Gaza.
بياخد باله من الكلام او almost certainly يعني تقريبا من المؤكد. يعني ايه تقريبا من المؤكد؟ عملت دراسة وطلعت التقرير، يا اما مؤكد ان هي حماس يا اما مش مؤكد ان هي حماس. ومفيش الكلام ده، وان الدراسات بتاعتهم كلها اكيد بتبقى مضروبة. اللي عمل بقى الدراسة فعلا وملوش لا في الطور ولا في الطحين ولا ليه يد في الحوار اصلا روسيا. قنوات اعلامية كتير روسية زي ارتي مثلا نقلت ان لا ده ما كانش من حماس ولا حاجة، ده صاروخ امريكي.
And they fired a rocket which landed in the hospital car park. In other words, it wasn't an Israeli airstrike.
So I have an issue with that, because for 3 days before the attack, the priest and the patriarch of the hospital, because it's called the Baptist hospital, said that they have received multiple warning from Israel that they're going to hit the hospital. And then at the time of the hit of the hospital, one of the top aides of Netanyahu, he tweeted about like we hit the hospital, and then he deleted it, and then basically like Israel gaslighted the world.
But
It was not us.
But that's why I said most independent.
No, that's not true. New York Times actually like just published something to prove that it was shot from Israel. And the thing is,
No,
okay,
they didn't though.
Okay, numbers.
They didn't.
Numbers.
Bassem, that's not true.
Okay.
The New York Times has not reported that it was Israel.
No, they said
They haven't.
okay.
That's not true.
Over 10 years, Hamas, they killed 69 people. And 25% military, only part of them were civilians. So over 10 years of 35,000 rockets, they killed 69 people. But in one strike, you want to tell me that these glorified firecrackers caused that kind of damage?
Yes, it looks like they did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually, it wasn't the damage that was reported by Hamas, who wanted people to believe it was an Israeli airstrike. So my point would be, I'm happy to concede that Israel government has lied about stuff over the years. But I'm absolutely certain as well that Hamas lie all the time.
Why are we holding a militant...
I believe, from all I've read, I believe they lied about the hospital.
Why are we holding the militant terrorist group to the same standards as the best
Because
and only
because they
democracy in the Middle East?
They happen to be the ruling party in Gaza. So they're not just a terror group, they are a political group as well,
Okay.
political party.
Okay.
Well, they are.
Mhm.
So the question again comes this, and so
حاسس انه
far,
بياخدوا على قد عقله، بس ده غلط طبعا. لا يقاوحوا في حاجات زي كده، لان دي بتبقى العقائد والافكار. ده اللي هو جاي اصلا للحلقه عشانه. مش مهم كل اللي انت عمال تقوله ده يا باسم، وان انا عارف ان يعني ممكن يكون هو بياخده لناحيه ان ماشي يا عم، ماشي يا عم، عشان يقول اللي هو عايز يقوله. اللي هو عايز يقوله اصلا ملوش لازمه. هو عامل الحلقه دي كلها من عشان يوصل لحماس جماعه ارهابيه، وحماس وحشه، وحماس شديده، يقلل من انسانيتهم، يقلل من اللي هم بيعملوه، ان مفيش حاجه اسمها مقاومه. ولو قضيت على المقاومه فانت قضيت على القضيه الفلسطينيه من الاخر يعني.
you've ducked it. So I want to ask you one more time. We can both agree that the scenes in Gaza right now are horrific, because I do feel that. But I don't know how else Israel can eradicate Hamas than the way that they're currently trying to do it. Do you have an alternative for them?
Well, again, we are locked in the same thing. What can we do now? But we don't look at what was happening over there. The best recruiter for Hamas is Israel. I mean, you have talked a lot about the horrible condition in Gaza.
Yes.
I mean, let's imagine like a little boy called Rami. He lives in Gaza. You know, he have a horrible life, but like, you know, it's not that bad. I know he has a cousin in the West Bank. He's living a good life. He wake up in the morning, and he found out that he was kidnapped by 3 settlers. He was burned alive by kerosene, and he was forced to drink the kerosene. His name was Muhammad Abu Khudair. Right? That settlers did that to him in 2016. So, all right, you know what? I'm just going to leave. I'm going to find a way to go to Europe. His aunt is a published author, and she won a prize in the Frankfurt Book Fair. His name is Adnaya Shtalabi. And now she was cancelled because of what's happening, just because of her a Palestinian. His other aunt in America, his name Amawi, she is a speech therapist, and this is close to my heart because of my son. And she was fired because she did not want to sign for government contract that said that you cannot join BDS, which I don't understand. Why do people choosing to protest peacefully by not buying goods from a certain country? Why would the United States make that its own issue? So, and this guy, this Rami is being approached by like, join Hamas, join us, let's go kill Israel. No, I don't want to kill. I'm going to live in Gaza. It's a life. But 97% of water is not good for human consumption. Half of the population are anemic. Even the is not being treated, and it goes into the shores of Israel. It's like, oh, those Palestinians.
Which is horrendous.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
So, and then he wakes up in the morning. He doesn't think about killing Jews the first thing in the morning. He thinks about being there at 5 o'clock at the first 50 people in the line for bread, because if he doesn't, he will miss the food for his family. And he goes back, and he finds a message saying that we are going to bomb your house. He comes back, he loses his whole family. Now, tell me, what is a proportionate response for that?
I don't know. I don't know.
You cannot create terrorism and then you.
I don't know.
You have. They have created
But
this.
I don't know is the answer. But Bassam, let me ask you this: Hamas will have known when they perpetrated what they did on October the 7th, what the scale of response was likely to be. How does that help the Palestinian people?
I don't know.
That they are supposed to serve.
I don't know. The wheels are.
هما الاثنين لا اعرف لا اعرف لا اعرف. هي دي المشكله. انت في الاول هنقول انت اللي عملت حماس، مش انت اللي عملت حماس يعني انت اللي مولت حماس وحماس فكرتك. لا، انت باللي انت عملته في فلسطين وبتعمله بقالك 70 سنه هو اللي عمل حماس. حماس لسه جديده، ده حماس بعد الالفينات يا جماعه. طب قبل الالفينات وكل اللي كان بيحصل في الفلسطينيين دون، واحتلال ارضهم والمستوطنات والتعذيب والتخنيق عليهم وكل الحاجات اللي باسم قالها دي، وكل ده قبل حماس. فانت عملت بقى حماس، ترجع تقول ايه الرد المتناسب؟ طب ما ايه الرد المتناسب على اللي انت كنت عمال تعمله كل السنين اللي فاتت دي؟ حماس عملته ده يعتبر ولا حاجه، المفروض كان يبقى اكتر من كده بكتير. ان شاء الله ربنا يوفقه.
already set in motion.
But it doesn't, does it?
I do not. You know, I feel sometimes that Hamas is with us in the room. That we are bringing Hamas. Who has the power in this equation? Who has the fourth largest and strongest military power? The whole idea about Israel, it's like, oh my God, the Arabs are going to destroy us. Look at the map.
Hamas, well, hang on. Hang on. Hamas's stated goal is the eradication of Israel and the Jewish people.
Yes.
They make no pretense about it. They've made no attempt, unlike the Nazis who try to cover up their crimes.
Absolutely.
مفيش حاجه اسمها كده، هم عايزين يقضوا على دوله اسرائيل بس وما يبقاش فيها يهود عادي في ارضهم. هو حر، دي ارضه، هي ارضه، ويقول اللي هو عايزه. انا مش عايز اسرائيليين في ارضي، عايز اقضي على الدوله الاسرائيليه تماما. انما حوار يقضي على اليهود ده مفيش الكلام ده، هم عبط. يعني ايه يقضي؟ لو في يهودي في امريكا مثلا هيفضلوا يعملوا جيش ويفضلوا يعملوا ضربات مثلا جويه اللي هناك، ويقصفوا بقى صواريخ على امريكا من غزه لحد امريكا، صح؟ يبعتوا على هناك. ولو في مثلا فلسطين يهودي فهيجيبوه، لا هنجيبه، مش هينفع الكلام. كلام عبيط. هو عايز يقضي على دوله اسرائيل، مش عايز يقضي على اليهود كلهم. بس كالعاده صهيوني لازم يقدم الفكره دي.
No attempt to
Yes.
try and deny what they brazenly boasted about it.
Yes.
They are proud of what they did. Right? And they will have known, again, the scale of what they did on October the 7th would have prompted this kind of response,
ضل
which would have led to thousands of innocent Palestinians.
وجعاهم حرقاهم. بص عامله جرح فظيع 7 اكتوبر
getting killed. And my question for you...
I wish the 7th of October never happened.
Right, but
every time something
you say
happened.
Hamas is everywhere. Well, yeah, actually all roads,
but
roads on this particular
okay.
part of the crisis, and I accept it's been going on for 75 years, this conflict, but all roads in this crisis lead to Hamas and what they did.
And not necessarily, because
yes.
all roads goes to the condition that created Hamas. If the Jewish people were expelled from Europe and went to Argentina or South Africa and Uganda and went in and took the land, you would have Hamas in all of these places.
You and I can agree that the conditions Palestinian people have had to endure in Gaza for a very long time are completely unacceptable. I think it's completely unacceptable that Israel has wielded such control over the people of Gaza, working out who can come in and who can go out, turning on and off water and power on a whim, turning off the internet on and off at a whim, all that kind of stuff I can completely agree with. But given that I think we agree Hamas are a terror group...
Okay, let's say...
okay. Let me finish my question. Given that we agree that Hamas is a terror organization who have a publicly stated position of annihilating not just Israel but Jewish people, and as we saw on October the 7th, they mean it. If you are Israel, what do you do to get rid of those people who have shown the world that's exactly what they will actually do if they get the chance?
You know what I would do? I would give the Palestinians what they deserve. Terrorism is a virus.
Yes?
It's a virus.
I agree.
If a patient with a...
عمال يروح معاه ويوافق فعلا ان هم جماعه ارهابيه، بس مش عارف بصراحه هو بيقول ايه، وممكن يكون يعني عنده حجه كويسه. ممكن يكون عنده هنا حجه كويسه، فانا مش عارف بصراحه هيروح
The
فين.
flu came to you and you're a doctor. How can you treat that patient? How do you treat? As a doctor, how do you do?
Well, you're the doctor.
You give them nutrition, fluids, and rest. So the immunity of the body gets rid of the virus on its own. If I received that patient with a flu and I took a sledgehammer, it's like, why are you not getting better? Do you think that patient will get better? No. You are weakening him. You are making him worse. Israel did not just like weaken the body of Palestinians, making them unable to get rid of hate and radicalism. They have openly bolstered about helping and giving money to the same terrorist organization. So,
I agree. I think Netanyahu is complicit in keeping Hamas in power because it suited him politically.
yes,
And I think you can't get away from that.
yes.
There's no question of that. But there's also no question.
زي برضه زي اسمه ايه ده لما روسيا دخلت افغانستان، اتعمل ايه ساعتها؟ المجاهدين الابطال اللي كان بيشاد بيهم في كل حته في الصحف العالميه، كان بيتشاد بالمجاهدين الاسلاميين اللي رايحين يحاربوا روسيا الشريره. انت متخيل قبل بقى مصطلح الارهاب والكلام ده كله كان بيتقال على المجاهدين الاسلاميين ابطال وشجعان وعظماء في كل الصحف العالميه، ومنهم مصر على فكره والدول العربيه. كانوا زي الفل، وكان بدعم من امريكا. اول بقى ما طبعا الناس دي قالت لا، طب انا هحارب روسيا بس، انا الاسلام ما بيقوليش كده، الاسلام بيقول لي ان انت جيت تحاربني انت كمان يا امريكا. طب انت جاي تحاربني وعايز تاخد افغانستان؟ لا، هروح احاربك انت كمان في ارضك. هو ده الجهاد الصح. وعملوا كده، راحوا قلبين عليهم وطلعوا لنا بقى مصطلح الارهاب والجماعات الارهابيه والجهاد الاسلامي وكل الكلام المتخلف ده. بس في الاول خالص هم اللي عاملينهم وهم اللي داعمينهم. بس لما يقلب عليك، لانه طبعا هو عاقل وعنده عنده عقيده ماشي عليها، هي عقيده الاسلام هو ماشي عليها، فهو خدك على قد عقلك.
The Israeli government led currently by him, has to stop Hamas from perpetrating another terror attack. And again, it comes down to this question. What do they do to get rid of Hamas if it's not what they're doing?
I don't know. But like as an Israeli citizen listening to this, how come that my prime
ازاي؟
minister bragging about giving money to the
ازاي؟
terrorist group that he is using right now to
عشان
eradicate a
تقتلني.
whole group of people and yet using them as an excuse? Isn't that weird? This is like
Yeah, but I can agree with you.
الرئيس بتاعي والحكومة بتاعتي بتدي فلوس لجماعة إرهابية، فالجماعة الإرهابية دي جت وقتلت عيلتي وخطفت ناس منهم ومش عارف ايه، فالرئيس بتاعي راح واخد اللي حصل في عيلتي ده حجة ان هو يروح يقتل عيلة ناس تانيين ما لهمش علاقة اصلا بالجماعة الإرهابية اللي هو دعمها واداها فلوس.
This is like Tony Blair being like found like giving money to Al-Qaeda or ISIS and then going to fight them. How does this work? How does this work?
I agree.
How does this work?
but Basim, I agree with
so
you.
yeah, it's a terrorist attack. And Israel is funding them? I mean, this is in the words of Benjamin. This is the thing about Benjamin Netanyahu. He brags about that stuff. So this is
مش هو بس، مش هو، هي دي عقليتهم، دي دماغهم اقل مني، فانا استعملتهم عشان خاطر سبب سياسي او اي حاجه، بس بعد كده قلبوا عليا. ده كلامهم هم طبعا، هو مفيش الكلام دون. هو لو كان بيدي فلوس لحماس فحماس خدته على قد عقله عادي، هات يا عم فلوس، ايه المشكله؟ يعني هتطلب مني حاجه؟ لا طبعا مش هنفذها وهعمل عمليات ضدك.
This is a circular question.
Yeah, but
yes,
I agree with you.
Hamas is to blame. Who created Hamas? Who is helping them? And who is allowing for an environment for that kind of hate?
ده لو هنمشي بنفس منطقهم، انا مش عارف بصراحه باسم قصده هنا ان هو فعلا بيعترف بحاجه زي كده، ولا بيقول لهم لو مشينا بنفس منطقكم ان هي فعلا اسرائيل هي اللي عامله حماس عشان خاطر تحافظ على نفسها في السلطه وكل الكلام دوت، فلو مشينا بالمنطق دوت ايه المشكله برضو؟
And destruction of Jewish people to aspire. And the thing is, there's something very important to the Western audience here. They think that Israel is a small, tiny country between a hostile Arab countries. The biggest military power in the Arab world is Egypt. They have a peace treaty. Their neighbors, Jordan, they have a peace treaty. Saudi Arabia, Emirates, either like have like full relationship or like on the
حد فيهم حتى هيجرأ يشتمك.
The only people that, even Syria is not like even like didn't launch like a single bullet. The only two crutches that Israel has is like Hezbollah and Hamas. A few militant, thousands of militant. Syria, is that? That really formed an existential like threat, especially if I know that over 13 years, only 69 Israelis were killed.
I would say.
Is that would that really wipe out Israel? Is Israel that weak?
I think if you have two groups of people who are ideologically wedded to your destruction as a state and as a populace, and you're constantly firing rockets, as Hamas have done for over a decade now, then that cannot be acceptable. You have to stop that, right? These are terrorists who've now shown on October the 7th their true colors. They don't just talk about wanting to kill all Jewish people. They are going to do it if they get the chance. So I don't believe Hamas can possibly stay in any position of authority in Gaza. I think that would be ruinous for not just the people of Gaza, but also for Israelis. So if you're going to get rid of them, which many people think on both sides is inevitable and should happen as a consequence of what they did, the big question is, how do you do that? And I don't know any other way other than the way Israel is currently doing. Hence my personal moral quandary about this.
So if a terrorist takes over the Empire State, instead of taking him out, we bomb the whole Empire State?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Proportion.
That is not even a question. Well, that was not even a question.
بيسخر من منطقك المتخلف، ده مش سؤال. هتعمل كده؟ مستحيل تعمل كده.
Question, because that would be ridiculous.
You talk about the normalization of the region. I mean, the theory that I most buy into, supported by recent, I think, Wall Street Journal reporting, that hundreds of Hamas terrorists had gone to Iran for training before this attack.
Okay.
It had obviously been very carefully organized, and so that is, I think, highly likely. But if you're Iran, and you're looking at all this normalization, and you're looking at Saudi Arabia being next, this is your worst nightmare. So a perfect time to commit an atrocity like this through your proxy of Hamas.
Again, I'm not a
فيش
political
الكلام ده.
expert to know what is the background, but let me tell
It's
you,
a likely theory.
is Hamas justified?
Likely
Is all
نظرية
the horrible
محتملة.
conditions that Palestinians are living in, is that a justification for Hamas doing what they did in October
No.
7th? Good.
Do you think so?
Of course not.
Right. So we're agreed.
No, of course. So let me ask you the question a different way. There is no justification what Israel is doing now. No Hamas, no terrorist attack justifies this.
Well,
Because
that's-
you have been there.
No, but that's
you
the-
have been there. You
Yeah.
have stood against the Iraq war.
Yes.
And that is too much.
Yeah, but here's the
you are
difference.
killing a whole
No,
population.
here's the difference. I didn't stand against them for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
I stood against the Iraq war because I did not believe we had seen evidence.
يعني هو ما عندوش مشكلة حتى لو كانوا لقوا دليل على وجود أسلحة دمار شامل في العراق ودخلوا، فهو ما عندوش مشكلة إنك تقتل مليون واحد. أكيد يعني الجيش مش مليون واحد، المدنيين اللي ماتوا دول كلهم ما عندوش مشكلة معاهم. مشكلته الوحيدة إن هم ما لقوش دليل على وجود أسلحة الدمار الشامل. طب وبعدها قلبتوا المنطقة كلها. بس كالعادة هنرجع نلف في الدايرة تاني لأنه هو عمال يلف في نفس الدايرة ونقول هو شايفك أقل منه، هو شايفك إنسان أقل منه، مش شايفك إنسان أصلا. زي ما وزير الدفاع بتاع إسرائيل قال هم مش شايفينك مساوي ليهم.
That Saddam Hussein had
Okay.
weapons of mass destruction. So we were fighting a war against a
اعرف كده وحطها في
country
دماغك.
and a despotic leader which had nothing to do with 9/11 as they were trying to claim. It was actually a lie perpetrated on the world, and the consequences were disastrous. 1 million people died. I mean, over 150 British troops died. My brother served in Iraq and could have been one of them. You know, the whole thing was a fiasco, a deadly fiasco. It led to the rise of ISIS and all the hell that came with that. So, you know, yes, absolutely, I fought that campaign against that war, and I wish I'd been successful. But the singular difference here is no one is disputing, least of all the Hamas themselves, that they perpetrated this attack. And I believe Israel has a fundamental right and a duty to defend its people from them doing it again. So if we can agree on that as a principle of a country that's had that kind of attack and how you deal with it,
عايز
the
ياخد
question
منه
then
برضه
becomes,
نفس الحاجة.
how do you eradicate the people who did it? And I just think given the intense nature of the way the population exists in Gaza, very, very large numbers of people in confined places, and that is in itself unacceptable, and I will agree with you about all of that, and that has to be fixed longer term. But actually, if Hamas are everywhere there amongst these people, I just don't see any alternative to what they're doing. And I'm very happy to consider one. But I don't think you have one either.
So if the Iraqis were actually, there was evidence that they were behind 9/11, would that still be okay to kill
Well,
a million
we
Iraqis?
have a parallel, which is Afghanistan.
نايس، حلوة طبعا، حلوة. ما هو فاهم هو بيقول ايه. انا نفس اللي انا قلته بالظبط. يعني انت ما عندكش مشكلة لو لقينا اسلحة دمار شامل ان انت يموت مليون واحد؟ هيروح لافغانستان. ماشي.
And in fact, I would say, but that raises a different question. So was the Afghanistan war just? I believe.
هو ما سألكش اذا كانت عادلة ولا لا، ما احنا عارفين انها مش عادلة زي ما الحرب دلوقتي مش عادلة، ما لهاش علاقة. افغانستان ما اعلنتش الحرب عليك. افغانستان ما اعلنتش الحرب على امريكا حتى بعمليه 9/11 اللي هي عمليه عمليه 9/11 يعني كلنا عارفينها، يعني ضرب البرجين بتوع امريكا. بس انا الواحد مش عايز يتكلم عشان اليوتيوب في الموضوع ده بيعمل له ازمه وجوديه. اسمع علينا، يعني ضرب البرجين التجاره بتوع امريكا اللي المفروض هم بيقولوا حزب القاعده وبن لادن وحوار كبير يعني. بس ما علينا، حتى بحصول دون كده افغانستان ما اعلنتش الحرب. هنقول ده تنظيم موجود جوه افغانستان فاعلن الحرب على افغانستان كلها وموت كل الناس اللي ماتوا دول، وفي الاخر افشل بره. يعني في الاخر هو خرج قفاه مقمر، قفاياته مقمره عيش. ما نشوف هيقول ايه على الموضوع ده.
It was in a way that Iraq wasn't. I believe that Afghanistan was harboring terrorists, Al-Qaeda. We know that they were training there. We know the Taliban were there. And we went in, we launched this war. It goes on and on and on. Huge bloodshed on both sides. And in the end, after a ridiculous overnight pullout by America and President Biden, the Taliban are back in charge and waging the same kind of medieval rule they waged before all this. So
بص مشكلته في ايه؟ خدت بالك يا لهوي، خدت بالك مشكلته فين؟ مشكلته قال لك الحكم بتاع العصور الوسطى. انت مالك؟ هم بيحكموا شعبهم، وهو شعبهم وبتاعهم، ومنهم فيهم اصلا يعني طالبان دي هم جنسيتهم افغانستانيين، فهي بيحكموا شعبهم بالطريقه اللي هم عايزينها. لا هو مش عايز كده، تحكم بالطريقه بتاعتي انا عايزك شبهي، عايزك تبقى زيي، او مش عايزك تبقى زيي بقى، انا عايزك انت اقل مني في العادي بس عايزك تحكم بالطريقه بتاعتي، تتبنى افكاري عشان تبقى عبد كده وتحت جناحي طول الوقت.
You got two things. Was it justified to strike back at Afghanistan for harboring Al-Qaeda? I would say yes. Did the means in the end justify?
لا طبعا مش يس ولا حاجه، هي لا، لان مش افغانستان اللي اعلنت الحرب عليك، زي ما مش غزه اللي اعلنت الحرب على اسرائيل.
By the war,
بنفس
you could
الحجة
argue no, actually, because actually you ended up with the Taliban back in charge. So they're two different things. And it may well be here, by the way, as I've said, that if Israel pursues this ground invasion, it backfires horribly. It leads to a much wider conflict involving many other people, possibly including Iran directly. And it could be a horrendous escalation and a massive war raging through the whole region. And that is my fear about it. But I come back to the central point of justification, and I'm really struggling to see what else Israel is supposed to do to get rid of Hamas. And if you've got an alternative, let's hear it.
I do. Pierce, this is never about Hamas. Believe me, it is never about Hamas. If somebody tells you who they are, listen. Israel has been telling the world all the time, they need to clear the Gaza Strip into Egypt.
You think that's always been the plan?
Always. I mean, they have said it. They have said it many times. Why does Egypt take them? And do you think when Egypt takes them, do you think they'll go back? No, never. And then when they're done with Gaza, they will go back to the West Bank. They will kind of like build the settlements around them, and then until they push them into Jordan, because that is the plan. They have talked, not just Benjamin Netanyahu, everybody said like there's no state, two states. It is one state, and it's for the Jews.
I don't think he believes in a two-state solution.
Nobody believes in a two-state solution. It is one state.
But nor do Hamas, obviously, and they're the ruling authority in Gaza.
They
don't.
You see what you're comparing? It's a militant group. It's a small militant group.
But they are
Israel as a nation.
They are the elected political leadership.
يا عم قيادة سياسية ازاي بس؟ مفيش حاجة اسمها كده. هو ايه اللي قيادة سياسية؟ انت فاكر انها دولة بقى وبيحصل انتخابات وبيخشوا البرلمان وبعد كده بيبقى في رئيس مفيش الكلام ده كله. مفيش الكلام ده كله. غزة يا جدعان نصها اطفال، عيال صغيرة ما لهمش اصلا حق الانتخاب. انت بتتكلم في ايه؟
They were elected in 2006, and 50% of the people in Gaza right now are under the age of 16. They were not even born.
I understand.
Yeah, like, so, and the
so
thing,
all right, so Bاسm, let's agree about that.
But that's the circle state. It's
I understand. It's
Hamas.
واخد بالك هو عمال يلف في الموضوع ده، وانا عمال يلف على حماس ويقول لك هم المجموعه عشان عايز يحول كل الفلسطينيين. دي الخطه برضه، عايز يحول كل الفلسطينيين لحماس. يا جدعان الطفل الصغير ده اللي عنده 4 سنين اللي لسه ماشي في الشارع بيزحف حرفيا، ده حماس، ده مشروع جهادي اسلامي من الاخر. فلا انا ليا كل الحق ان انا اقتله. انتوا يا عالم عايزين داعش جديده، عايزين ارهابيين يفضلوا موجودين؟ لا، انا مهمتي بقى انا بخلص لكم العالم من الارهابيين دول. هو شايف ال 2 مليون كلهم ارهابيين، وشايف ال 3.5 مليون اللي هناك برضه في الضفه الغربيه ارهابيين. هو شايف كده وعايز بقى يوصل العالم من كده.
Hamas.
I know, but okay, let's move forward.
Oh, yeah.
Let's assume somehow we get to a place, possibly at the instigation of countries like Saudi Arabia and others getting directly involved, where you get to a place where Hamas are removed, and I don't quite see how that happens without enormous further bloodshed, but let's assume they get removed.
بص برضه هو بان على حقيقته. إسرائيل مكملة في اللي بتعمله من الآخر.
Let's assume that Netanyahu is removed from office, which I think is highly likely just from the fury of his own people about what they see as the defensive and security failings, plus his attack on the Supreme Court already causing huge polarization. Let's assume we get new leadership in both places. Could there still be peace? Could there still be a two-state solution?
No.
It can never happen.
No, because Israel have already shown it's not about Netanyahu. It is the policy of.
يعني ازاي؟ طب ما تعمل الضفة الغربية دولة. لحد دلوقتي اهو، لحد من 2006 حماس اتعملت 2006 لحد دلوقتي، ليه الضفه الغربيه ما اتعملتش دوله؟ ليه ما تعملها دوله وسيبها مع نفسها وحدودها، وعايزه تعمل جيش تعمل وقوانينها ودنيتها مع حالها؟ ما عملتش كده ليه؟ وعمال تبني مستوطنات ليه في الضفه الغربيه وتاخد مساحه وتاخد مساحه وتخنق عليهم وتقرفهم زي ما قرف غزه بالظبط؟ لان حماس مالهاش علاقه، هي اسرائيل كده، اسرائيل شغلانها كده.
Israel not to give the Palestinians their seat. It has always been there.
But what if you find leadership that understands?
You will not.
But why are you
You
so?
will not.
Why do you not think so?
Because Israel has been, you know.
But they would say the same about the other side. And I remember.
Who has the power?
Let me give you a parallel.
مين اللي عنده السلطه يا عم الحاج فعلا؟ ايوه مين اللي عنده السلطه؟ انت اللي قدامك، انت اللي عندك القوه، انت اللي قدامك القدره ان انت تعمل كذا. خلاص يا عم انا هديك حق، ساعتها بقى يبقى انت عندك حجه. هديك حقك ماشي، انا هعمل حل للدولتين، حل الدولتين ماشي منطقي وطبيعي، يلا نعمله. مع ان انا طبعا ضد الكلام ده، بس يلا نعمله. عملت كده؟ ما عملتش كده. انت وافقت، قلت للعالم، قلت قدام العالم يا جماعه انا موافق، هنقسم، هديهم 30% من الارض، مش 22%، 30% فوق بقى من قطاع غزه، لا هديهم اماكن تانية وحتت تانية، 30% من الارض، ويعملوا دوله بحدود علاقات معلنه تعترف بيها طبعا استاذه امريكا وتعترف بيها كل الدول وزي الفل. انت قلت انا هعمل كده؟ لا، لان انت مستحيل تعمل كده.
Obama in his book.
Let me give you a parallel.
Okay.
Let me give you a parallel. Northern Ireland. Okay. Northern Ireland appeared to be completely intractable with the IRA and the loyalist
عشان
paramilitaries.
كده ايرلندا الشماليه على فكره من اكتر الشعوب، ايرلندا عامه من اكتر الشعوب المتعاطفه مع الفلسطينيين دلوقتي، ومظاهرات وليله جميله لانهم قريبين منهم. بسبب القصه اللي حكايه دي برضه، بريطانيا كانت مديها على دماغها وحاجه اخر قرف كعاده بريطانيا يعني.
Trying to kill each other. In the IRA's case, trying to kill British people as well, because they did not want this to go the way that people wanted it to go. And ultimately, we got to peace because we found leaders who actually had.
وجدنا القادة الخاينين اللي هيوافقوا على كل اللي احنا هنقوله لهم وهيبوسوا الجزم.
The courage to get in the room with the people that were trying to kill them and to do a deal. I don't think you can do that with Hamas. They're on a different scale altogether to the IRA. But we did have a seemingly.
دول مش بني ادمين. الجيش الايرلندي الشمالي اللي هم كانوا عايزين يقتلوا البريطانيين بني ادمين. ليه؟ لانهم بيض. دول اوروبيين بيض، فبني ادمين. انما لا، حماس دول مش بني ادمين يا باشا، عمرهم ما هيعملوا كده ولا عمرهم ما يقفوا على حاجه زي كده. انما اسرائيل جميله.
Intractable place riddled with violence on both sides, and eventually we got peace. Do you not see there's any chance of doing that here?
No, not with Israel. Obama, after he left office, he wrote in his book, the problem with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is that one side is extremely powerful and one side is extremely weak. There is absolutely nothing to oblige that strong side to give anything. All over the years, Israel showed you many times that they are not interested in peace. Leave Gaza. Forget Hamas for a second. The West Bank. What have they been doing in the West Bank? The illegal settlements did not stop a single day.
No, and it's completely wrong.
Yeah, but the thing
is, it's wrong. I agree with you.
But you see what they're doing in the West Bank right now? They are creating little Gazas. They are creating little Gazas.
Yeah.
And until they are like squeeze them.
It's completely wrong.
There is a hilarious documentary called The Wanted 18. It is like an Israeli-Palestinian co-production, and it tells about the incredible story about the residents of Beit Sahur. It's a Palestinian town next to the Nazareth. And they said they don't want to depend on the milk coming from the kibbutz. So they bought 18 cows. 18 cows. And they didn't know how to milk the cows or have a cow farm. So they were like engineers and doctors. So they sent people to kind of like to learn how to do the farm. So they bought the cows and they started to produce milk and they started to sell the milk to the villages. The Israeli authorities were not very comfortable. So one day the military government came in and said, like, those cows, and I quote, constitutes an existential threat to the national security of the state of Israel. You need to get rid of them. And the movie goes about like the hilarious attempts of hiding those cows between the butchers and the houses. And in one scene, a cow is actually running and the Israeli soldiers are like running behind it and they corner it and they're about to kill it. And you know what did the cow say? You didn't fall for this, cows don't speak. Yeah! But you know, it actually said something. You know what did it say? It said Hamas. But anyways. But you see, this is the ideology of the Israeli ruling party. They are not interested. They're not even allowing you to get your own cows. I mean, I want to discuss something that is very important, because we have been talking about Israel being a democratic state, a secular state for all of its citizens, including its Arab residents, right? Wrong, 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 wrong. 2018, there was a resolution that was offered in the Knesset that say that Israel should be a state for all of its citizens. That seems basic, right? That resolution was not even allowed to be discussed. It's like, wait, why? And the rebuttal was, Israel being the state of all of its citizens would threaten the character of the Jewish state. There is, I have a friend of mine, his name is Andrew, he's Palestinian.
اكتر الناس العنصريين في الدنيا ومجتمعات مغلقه، وكانوا بيطردوا اصلا من اوروبا ومن الدنيا كلها بسبب ان هم مجتمعات مغلقه على نفسهم وعنصريين لابعد حد. انت عمرك ما ينفعش تدي سلطه الناس زي دي. الناس زي دي شايفه العالم كله اقل منها وهم شعب الله المختار.
Palestinian Christian, they do exist. And his family comes from a town called Tarshiha. As many Palestinian towns, these were like, you know, had another Israeli town called Kafar Radin. It is a left-leaning town. They voted against Netanyahu by 70%. And they announced an auction to sell houses. And then they noticed that most of the applicants were Palestinians. They canceled the auction. Why? Because in each Jewish town, there is something called admission committee that can decide who can live in this town. Sounds like Jim Crow for me. And then they canceled. And you know what they say in the reason? They say, Kafar Radim welcomes all citizens of Israel despite their race, gender, or color. However, the majority of the town would like to preserve the character of the town as being Jewish, Zionist, and secular. How does this go together, secular and Jewish aside? You know, and this brings me to this picture. This is a very famous picture. You know, remember this picture? I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah.
This, for the people who don't know, this from San Augustine, Florida, 18th of June, 1964. This was a white-only motel. And these are black activists who wanted to defy the law and jump into the hotel. This guy is the owner of the hotel. His name is James Brooke. And he was pouring acid to scare them out of the hotel. His neighbor said that James Brooke was a victim because he was just following the law. And you know what James Brooke said? He said, it's not like I don't like black people. I just don't like them in my swimming pools. Now, if an official said that, wouldn't you say that this town has kind of a systemic racism?
Yes.
This quote was not said by James Brooke. It was said by Deton, the head of the Galilee municipality, when he said, I don't like Arabs. I don't just like them in my swimming pools. The town of Nazareth Elite, 2010, the Arab Christians in the town, they requested to set up the Christmas tree next to Nazareth. This is the birthplace of Jesus. And you know what they said? We cannot have it because non-Jewish symbols would offend Jewish residents.
But this comes back to what you were saying at the start, which is about the hate on both sides.
No, I'm not talking about the hate. I'm talking about this shining example that Israel won't tell the world that we are like the Western world. We are secular. I don't know if you know this, but they're not just like secular, like Christians against their own Arab. I'm talking about like Arabs with Palestinian, with Israeli identity. I'm talking about them being even racist against their own people. 1950, Yemenis immigrants that came from Yemen, and they were in the transition camp waiting to be transferred into Israel. Their kids were taken away from them and given to white Ashkenazi Jews because they were not white enough.
But Basim, what would happen if a Jewish person went to Gaza?
Why would they go to Gaza?
Exactly.
Even I wouldn't go to Gaza.
Exactly. That's my point.
Yeah, it's a dystopia. But I'm just.
So it's not just. You're raising points about Israel, making it out that somehow they're as bad or worse.
No. But
what's going on there? Hamas has ruled over
yes,
the Palestinians in the most oppressive way imaginable.
Absolutely, but you know what? Hamas never claimed that they are the only democracy in the region. They never claimed that they are secular. They never said that they adopt Western tradition. And they definitely, they did not use that lie in order to carpet bomb a whole country.
Okay.
Now here, I want to say one example, and I'm going to leave you.
All right.
Israel, you think that Israel will like by the way, the whole thing about the Yemeni children, you can find it in New York Times. It's called like the lost children of Israel, the forgotten. But even when Ethiopian people were immigrated to Israel, Ethiopian Jews, women then report 2013. That is not like 50 years ago. They reported that they were given against their consent and without their knowledge contraceptive shots so they wouldn't reproduce because they are the wrong color. Israel is a racist, apartheid country that is projecting this shiny example of secularism and democracy for the people so people can accept whatever they do because they look at Palestinians as lesser people. This is the whole point. This is the whole point. And I would like to quote Winston Churchill. He had a quote that say, I don't believe that we have made a great wrong to the Red Indians of America or the black people of Australia because they were replaced by a higher race, a stronger race, a more world-wisely race. This is why Queen Rania is criticizing the West. This is why we here said, like, where are your values? Because this is the crux of the problem. It's not Hamas. It's not Palestine. It is people looking at us as lesser human beings.
Basim, I don't dispute the characterization that a lot of the Israel administration look upon Palestinians as lesser people. Otherwise, they wouldn't.
They even look at the Ethiopian Jews and Yemeni Jews like less.
I wouldn't dispute that. I want to quote you to end this.
No, why would you end this? Don't end this.
We'll be talking for 2 hours.
Why not?
At some point,
we're having an amazing time.
We can do another interview. Well, this one goes big. I think this is a neat way to end it. He said, I actually believe there is a middle ground between everybody and they can meet. I direct my criticism for the extreme of each one of them. That was you, Basim Yusuf. I agree with that. But I don't share your view there can never be peace in this region. I think there can't be with the current leadership structures in both countries, or both places, but I definitely think you've got to be optimistic about peace. You just need to find people
I
who
hope
can
so.
forge it.
I hope so, but the reason...
بس طبعا ما ينفعش. هل انت هتديهم دولتهم كاملة؟
I refuse to come on your show when your producer first called me for the first interview because I was scared. I was afraid. For me, that was a career suicide. Because I'm talking. This is even important because you are someone who's always talked about like against cancel culture, about like talking, speaking your mind out. I left Egypt and I came to America, the land of the free, the home of the brave. But I didn't know that there was a fine print said that you cannot speak about Israel. I have issue with that. Israel is a foreign country. They're allies. Good.
But you can speak about Israel.
How many people lost their jobs? Even Bella Hadid. Bella Hadid, by the way,
She hasn't lost her job.
No, but she talked about death threats. She's talking about like being silenced.
Sure.
By the way, Bella Hadid is with us. She's Palestinian. And you know who else? Gigi Hadid, sisters.
I love the Hadid.
They are with us.
Yeah.
Anyway, so...
I know them both. They're very nice.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you are that high and you cannot speak about it, and it's not about... It's
well, you can. You just have to... You can. I mean, I've spoken out about these issues, and you get shot at, not literally, but metaphorically, all day long on social media. That shouldn't stop people from doing it.
I'm just like wondering, as an American...
You do?
As an American, yeah, but like, I'm doing now because like the first interview went well.
Right.
I'm doing that because I want people to see that you can really speak up and not just get canceled, but get rewarded. My career is going fine.
Yeah.
It's great because I want people to have the courage. There should be no limits. I'm kind of like so confused as an American citizen why every American presidential candidate have to go and kiss the hand and bend the knees to AIPAC. This is a lobby that works for a foreign country interest. Why don't we have like a lobby for Saudi Arabia? It is they're giving us more money.
But you know the great thing? You can say that here.
Yes.
You couldn't say it in Egypt. That's why you're living here.
Yes, but again, a lot of people feel the...
بيرجع تاني النقطة أقل. هناك هم ناس أقل، ناس ما بتفكرش، ناس همجيين رجعيين بيبضوا على أي حد معترض معاهم أو يتعارض معاهم في الكلام. بس هنا أنت في أمريكا الجميلة التحفة اللي سايباك تقول الكلام ده وأنا بس.
Burn the heat whenever they come down.
If I was an American, I'd be going, all right, Basim, all right, we'll take the criticism because you can do that in this country.
And I'm happy.
When you criticize the government in your own country,
yeah,
they drove you out.
Yes, and that's why I came to America to play the...
لا ما فيش الكلام ده. في حاجات برضه في امريكا ما تقدرش تقولها عادي، وهيتقبض عليك وهتتنفض وهتاخد على محترم يعني. هو لحد دلوقتي هو باسم هو باسم عمل حاجه كده لحد دلوقتي؟ انت فاكر كده يعني ان باسم لا بيلعب بقى لعبه خطيره جدا ودعم مش عارف ايه؟ ومفيش الكلام ده. هو باسم بيلعب في النص، بيحاول يخلي نفسه في النص على قد ما يقدر. هل حد هناك في امريكا يقدر يقول ان هو ما بيدينش هجوم 7 اكتوبر وان حماس دي مقاومه وانهم مش ارهابيين؟ مستحيل حد يقدر يقول كده وما يتقبضش عليه. فخليه يحرق زي ما هو عايز.
The white man's game to actually to pass this acquired white privilege to my children. But the problem
it's not just a country of white people.
But here's the problem.
And the white man's game, the game in America is not a white man's game. It's a game that actually has a democracy and believes in freedom of speech.
But there are dog whistles everywhere.
You're not going to be put in jail for this interview.
Or I can lose my career and I can lose jobs, and you know that.
You could know that. In Egypt you could.
No, here you can't.
In Egypt they arrested you.
Here you can't.
And they threatened you. And you would have probably ended up in prison or dead.
Here a lot of people lost their jobs because they spoke up.
It depends what they say.
Of course, but again,
if you're Kanye West,
يعني ايه؟ طب ما انا اقدر اقول اي حاجه.
Spew anti-Semitic
no, I'm not. No,
you're going to lose. You're going to lose what you have.
I will never adopt that kind of point of view. But the thing is, there is dog whistles everywhere. As I told you at the beginning, you cannot just say it's like anti-Semite. Like I mean, now how come that the Palestinian flag is outlawed? By the way, it's outlawed in Israel. If you raise the Palestinian, you go to jail. And now they're saying like the Palestinian flag is a pro-Hamas. No, it's not a pro-Hamas. No, I was doing a comedy show in Arizona, and a guy was like wearing like a kufiyah, like a scarf, and I took it, and I'm not like in hyperbole and like wearing symbols, but I just took it because like why are we going to outlaw colors and flags? That is absurd. That is not right.
I agree. I don't think you should, but you should certainly outlaw Hamas.
They're already outlawed. I mean, I'm not supporting them.
They're a terror group.
Okay. But the people with the power, the people who supposedly have the...
And you should, by the way, I will say this, you should be able to criticize the Israeli government without being accused of being anti-Semitic.
But
I have in this interview repeatedly, and I'm not anti-Semitic. I just have a problem with all of what the Israeli government's been doing.
And I have a problem with how any criticism to Israel by some circles here are considered anti-Semite. This is not fair.
But a lot of the people doing it are actually anti-Semitic.
Yes, but also a lot of Zionists are against Israel, that they hate the Jews. You know,
we've discussed that. I want to end on a happy.
But before that, I want to just like say 2 words about the media, which is, please.
Sure.
Mr. Zomlot, the Palestinian ambassador that you have, this guy lost 6 members of his family in an Israeli strike. And when he went on like some British news thing, he sat down and the lady told him, it's like, we are very sorry for personal fun. I'm sure you don't condemn the killing of Israeli civilians. What? In the same moment. There's another girl like called Yara Eid. She was like on Sky News. And the girl was like crying, like, I lost 30 members of my family, 17 of them are children, I lost my best friend. And then, what did you think would happen forget about empathy.
I think a lot of people...
What about manners?
Well, I think you have to start... I've said this repeatedly. You have to start from a place of humanity. You have to look at what happened on October the 7th and feel utterly outraged and disgusted for the loss of human life.
Yeah.
And you also have to feel that for what's happening in Gaza to innocent people.
But
and if you can't feel both for both sets of people, both sets of innocent people being killed, if you can't feel a sense of despair and horror over their deaths, you don't have any humanity.
Believe me, Pierce, it's not really about that. There's a deep sentiment in the Middle East, in Arabs, that the West do not look at us as equals.
Well, you know what?
So what I did, I went to the machines.
Yeah.
And I asked ChatGPT simple questions. Do Israelis deserve to be free? And you know what they tell me? Yes. Israelis deserve the right like any other people. And then I asked the same question, do Palestinians deserve to be free? And you know what they tell me? It is complex. It is a sensitive issue.
Well, it's not complex. It's not sensitive. The Palestinian people should be free.
Yeah, but even the machines have
finished, and they should have exactly the same rights to freedom and freedom of expression and the way to lead their lives and to water and to power and to internet that Israelis have and we have here in America and we have back in my home country. And I want that for the Palestinian people. We've got to end it there.
Okay.
Mainly because I've worked up a hell of a hunger in 2 hours of
ده كان نهاية الرياكشن. طبعا كويس اللي باسم عمله، وهو كان عايز ياخده للناحية معينة وقدر ياخده فيها، بس كالعادة يعني باسم طلع برضه بالمقابلة بحاجات كويسة كتير. ففي النهاية لو عجبتك الحلقة دي ما تنساش تدعس اللايك وتضغط على الاشتراك وتفرم الكومنتات وتدعي الجرس التنبيهات، وتدعي طبعا لاخواتنا في فلسطين ربنا ينصرهم. يلا سلام يا هومس.